Why should I get married?
I knew you would ask that. That is the education that is missing.
Rabbi, I'm so happy to be here with you. My name is David Yarus. I am the founder of JSwipe, the largest Jewish dating app with lots of love and lots of stories.
I'm Rabbi Manis Friedman, and I have a program that I started in 1970 together with Rabbi Feller in Minnesota called Beis Chana.
Okay, so we'll jump into some of the questions. How is it possible to marry someone after only dating for 3 weeks? Have Orthodox Jewish dating practices evolved enough to keep up with the times?
I think that after 3 years of dating, you basically come to the same decision you had when you went on your third date. I think if we did a study on that, you would find that that's true. After the third date, you pretty much decided, subconsciously. 3 years later, your conscious mind catches up and comes to the same conclusion. So if we could just, shorten that time a little bit, I think you can. Most people do make a pretty quick decision. But then they have to get up the courage to follow that decision. So there are problems because we're not educated in this area. Nothing is said. You're old enough, get married. Yeah, old enough. The question is, smart enough? Do we know enough? Do we understand what we're doing? There's a desperate lack of information there. But it doesn't have to take 3 years. And even after 3 years, you have no idea who you're marrying. So you might as well take a leap earlier.
Why?
Because part of the greatness of marriage is the ability to accept someone unconditionally. Well, if it's unconditional, what's the difference after the third date or after the third year? You're going to accept what's maybe not so comfortable or familiar. Surprises, there are going to be surprises. You can date for 10 years. You get married and it's all surprises. Because a married person is different. Marriage makes it different. So the question is, what kind of a husband are you going to make? Nobody knows that, even after 10 years of living together. But you're not a husband. So marriage is real. It's not just an extended dating. It's a whole different experience. And you don't know what kind of a husband a man is going to be until he's a husband. And you don't know what kind of wife a woman is going to be until she's a wife. So are you willing to do that? Take that risk? If not, then 10 years of dating isn't going to help.
And just the follow-up, have Orthodox Jewish dating practices evolved enough to keep up with the times? Maybe in what ways have they not?
The traditions are the same. The goal is the same. But the amount of information and education needs to be improved. It was taken for granted. Come on, you're 16, get married. Okay, now you're 25, get married. But where is the information? Where is the knowledge, the wisdom? So that needs to catch up.
Is that on parents? Is that on schooling? Is that on the individual?
Yes.
Perfect. So it's on the whole system.
Life, yeah. Especially if you're growing up in a family where the parents didn't get along so well. Now you got to do a lot of explaining. What is so precious about marriage that I should try it when my parents failed? Isn't that a good question? It's a devastating question. But let me ask you in reverse. What do you think some of the rabbis are missing? In your experience, where are the rabbis falling short? It's okay, I can take it.
I mean, I don't know if they are falling short. Oftentimes, these rabbis are living, beautiful lives and, modeling that for their communities and for their friends and people and their, the students or young people that they engage with. I guess the question for me would be, how much of what is happening in many of these young people's lives today are the rabbis like aware of? Is it sort of like, are they ostriching and just not thinking about the fact that these kids are either dating or, being intimate or living with one another? Like, do they not want to know? Is it earmuffs? Do they accept it? Do they understand that it's happening? Like, are they trying to change the practices that are happening, or are they trying to provide counsel, guidance, and helping to navigate sort of this new way of connecting or being? And I think maybe the answer is, or I don't know the answer, I would be curious to hear, but I think what's needed may be both, right? I don't know if we're going to be able to get people to convert from one way of dating to an entirely different way of dating. Some maybe. And for all of the rest that are going to continue living as they are, how do we drop the wisdom on them to help them make the right decisions for them and for community and for, family?
I think one of the devastating gaps, most rabbis come from the assumption, you get married. You get married and you have children and you raise your family. What's the question? Well, there is a question. So many young people today don't know why they should get married at all. So you're telling them how to date and how to get married. They don't want to. So dating has become like an alternative marriage. I'm dating well, having fun. What do I get married for? Ask the average rabbi, why should anybody get married? No one ever thought of that. So what do you mean? What do you mean? You got to get married. Can't take that for granted anymore.
Why should I get married?
I knew you would ask that. That is the education that is missing. In other words, if we want to fix something, you can go broader, look for more details, more information, more methodology, or go deeper. Get to the core of whatever issue it is. It's true of everything. Go deeper, you'll find an answer. Go looking all over the world for an answer, you're just going to add to confusion. So the deeper question is, why? I see people suffering, unhappy marriages. Why should I do it? And even happy marriages. So what? I'm happy not being married. So what's the difference? Why do we marry? And then, if we don't know why we marry, it's going to be very hard to explain the way we marry. Why you do it that way. Why do we do it that way? I don't know why we do it at all. So you're missing the foundation. And you're building this whole structure on emptiness. So what is marriage? Anybody ever asked that question before? Marriage means you get married. Well, thank you. That doesn't answer anything. So the typical answer will be, well, you got to have a family. I got to have a family? Can I have a family without getting married? Yeah. If you want to be crazy about it, yes. So here's how life has disintegrated. It was like a man meets a woman, they get married, then they get intimate, then they have a baby, and then they raise a family. In today's life, it's like man meets woman, yeah, so maybe they'll have sex, maybe they'll be intimate, maybe not. If they are intimate, maybe they'll have a baby, maybe not. So it's a fragmentation. It's like touching is not intimate. Intimate doesn't mean marriage. Marriage doesn't mean children. Children doesn't mean marriage, right? So it's like a smorgasbord. Pick whatever, In the traditional sense, in the traditional view, It's all one continuum. It's a solid oneness. So touching is intimate. Intimate means permanence, marriage, connection. Marriage means children. So if you're not going to have my baby, don't touch me. Right? It's all connected. But what is the purpose of marriage? Got to have an answer. You can't just say, well, that's what we do. Because in today's world, it's not what we do. So now what? So why do we get married?
Why do we get married?
If you look right in the description of creation, right at the beginning of the Torah, God separated the male and female sides of the first human being. What does that tell us? And why do we need to know this? It's weird. He was half male, half female. Come on. I don't even want to try to visualize that. So why are we told this? Saying that man, human being, was male and female tells us something we desperately need to know. And that is that being only male or only female is not natural. It's not natural. That's not what a human being is meant to be. Because we were created as one. The separation is unnatural. Everybody thinks separation was a vast improvement. Okay, now we're normal. No, now we're not normal. Because our original nature is to be one. So to be male or female is not the real being, is not the way. So God separates male from female and then immediately says, get married and become one. So what is the purpose of marriage? To go back to our original nature. That's what we mean by soulmate. Soulmate means you got separated, go back, rejoin, have a reunion so that you're whole. That's it. So then the question is, then why separate us? You're going back to the oneness you had before? So what's the point? You're running in circles. But here's the beauty of it. The male and female in Adam were like two sides of a coin, which means that they shared a spine, not a rib, a whole spine. So they were very united. They were very much one, inseparable, but they were back to back. They didn't see each other. By separating them and then saying, get married and become one, God is saying, become one again, but this time face to face, which is much more intimate. Now, the same is true with our soul. Our soul is a piece of God. God separates the soul, sends it down to the world, and says, serve me, we'll become one. Say, we were one, why'd you send me away? Yeah, we were one back to back. But now that you have freedom of choice, we can become one face to face. That's the story.
Beautiful.
Beautiful and holy. So the holiness of marriage has got to be reintroduced. Because without that holiness, marriage really doesn't have to be at all. There are psychological advantages, there are certain benefits. You live longer if you're married, statistically. But that's not what marriage is. If marriage isn't holy, it's not worth it. Now, what's holiness? There's a whole new subject.
Hit me with it.
No, that is really the problem. In the olden days, holiness was a familiar theme. You had holy days, you had holy books, you had holy people, you had holy places. Today, holiness is not familiar. But you're 25, you should appreciate the holiness of marriage. Holiness? Come on, don't drop that on me now. You didn't introduce me to holiness all my life. All of a sudden I should get holy? It's unrealistic. So we got to reintroduce the whole notion of holiness. Which people are desperate for, by the way. That's the good news.
What's bad news?
Bad news is that we don't know it. So all the counseling and all the therapy and it's missing the point. Actually, some of the experts are now saying we made a terrible mistake. We thought that improving marriage relationships would come as a result of increased pleasure. But now we realize in today's world, we don't need more pleasure. We have more pleasure than any generation in the past. We don't need more pleasure. We have chocolate. What we need is more closeness, and we're desperate for it. But a real closeness, not friend me on the internet. We're desperate for that closeness, and that closeness is mystical. It's holy. So if we don't explain it that way and we don't realize it, we're going to miss it. Meaningful relationship. Are you in a meaningful relationship? It's a joke. I was for a week. For a week is not a meaningful relationship. For a year is not a meaningful relationship. So that's what we need to be talking about.
How do we introduce holiness back into the ether? How do we communicate that to people who think that what they're looking for is a relationship?
Well, I may be seeing it in a kind of unbalanced way, because when people come to me for marriage counseling, they've already been to therapy. Now what are they looking for? And why would they ask a rabbi? So consciously or unconsciously, now they're looking for the holy ingredient, because intuitively they sense that that's what's missing. The awe of marriage. I know the comedy of marriage, but where's the awe? Of marriage, not of each other. So for example, we love each other, we're going to get married. No, don't. Don't. And we'll talk about love more, but you get married if you love marriage. If you don't love marriage, then don't marriage. Oh, but I love her. I love him. So, enjoy. What are you getting married for? So the question is not, do you love me? If we're going to get married, I want to know, do you love marriage? Are you in awe of the idea? Otherwise, why are we doing it? That's a very good question. You already love each other, so you're going to get married to what? To share the love? You're sharing the love. What do you want? Oh, we want to make a commitment. A commitment to what? To love each other forever? You can't promise that. You can't. So the commitment is to stay together even when you don't love each other? You have no intentions of doing that. So what are you saying? What are these vows? The vow is the marriage will be bigger than both of us, and we will both dissolve into that marriage. Because marriage is awesome. Not you're awesome. You're so awesome, I want to marry you. I don't get it. You're so awesome, I think we should live in Cleveland. What? How did you connect the two? Like, we're in love, so we should be married. No, you're in love, so Enjoy. It's a fundamental question. So the first thing you ask on a first date is not, so how do you like me now? That's horrible. The first question is, you really into marriage? It's like you can't wait to get married? And if the answer is, well, if the right person comes along, okay, then you're not interested in marriage. Let's stop wasting time.
So do you see dating as a means to marriage, like in as much as if the first question is, are you really into marriage, then should one date if they're not yet there, if they're not yet, ready to get married, but they want to feel it out?
That kind of gets to be nasty. I don't want to marry you, I just want to experiment with you. That's not nice. It creates a relationship that is, I don't know. It's not kind. It's not meaningful. We're just playing now, okay? Because I don't want to get stuck with you. Right? That's the first introduction. Look, I don't want to get stuck with you, okay? So can we just, mess around? And even if it's mutual, it's mutually destructive. What are you doing?
So is that to say that you believe that people should get married earlier in life? I don't think in your previous comment you mentioned, like why get married? I don't think most of my peers are asking why get married, as in why should I or should I not? Some might, but I think it's more why get married now when I want to go and see the world or go and get my degree, and then I need to be a professional, and then I want to be a career, etc., versus getting married and then navigating that together. So in the frame that you would suggest people not dating unless it was, do you like marriage, or are you ready for marriage? Is that to say that either they should get married before all of that, or just realistically think that they wouldn't date until they're through all of that?
Well, I think you're saying the same thing. Marriage is not a priority. I've got more important or more pleasant things to do before I surrender to the marriage. Like when all else fails, and I get a little old for running around, then I'll get married. That means marriage is not a priority. You're not in awe of marriage. You're in awe of travel, success, business, experimenting with life a little bit. So marriage is when everything else is done, then okay, I'll settle. Marriage has to be a priority. Starting a family has to be a priority. Otherwise, it's seen as a burden. I could be doing so many more interesting things, and I'm saddled with a family. Get a little resentful. How does that not happen? So yeah, getting married earlier, by the way, is a very good idea. Just naturally, nature dictates that we get married earlier. Because when the body is ready to reproduce and you delay it and delay it and delay it, can't be healthy. Fooling with Mother Nature, not nice.
Or having less kids, after they do whatever they want to do or get their degree, or maybe you're saying just get married earlier, I don't know, and then have that life and share that together.
Oh, for sure.
There's Esther Perel, Israeli or Jewish author, talks about this idea of a capstone versus cornerstone relationship, where the cornerstone relationship, our grandparent generation, and maybe our parents, but grandparents and before that, got married by the time they were, early 20s maybe, if not earlier, usually to someone within like 3 miles from their childhood home. And at the ages of 18, 19, 20, you're still developing your identity. And so when both people become a unit or blend into one, it's the cornerstone of the foundation of their lives that they build together. Now that people are getting married later these days, and later 20s, earlier 30s, you know more about who you are and your identity and what you like and what you don't like. And then you're looking for someone to fit a very specific slot that you've, identified as your partner. And then that, referring to that as the capstone relationship, and often citing that it's much harder to, find that fit later.
Yes.
I could, maybe make a case for either, but what would you say to the idea that our brains are still developing until we're 25 scientifically? So if people don't even know fully who they are, like they're not fully developed by the time they're 20, 21, 22, are they in their best senses to make some pretty lifelong decisions, hopefully lifelong, in that state, at that age, at that time?
So what was it in our grandparents' generation? Were they getting married prematurely? They weren't really developed? Then why did it work as well as it did? I think your brain develops as needed. Maturity comes as a response to need. If you need to be mature, you get mature. Like teenage girls having babies. When they become mothers, all of a sudden this reckless, brainless teenager becomes responsible and mature. Their brain develops faster. If I don't have to be mature till I'm 30, then I won't be. If I can push it to 40, I'll push it to 40. So our grandparents were certainly more mature when they got married than we are when we get married. So marriage actually makes you mature. If you know you're going to be married at 17, you become mature at 15 or 16, right? Okay, so here's a crucial difference. Our grandparents married each other. They married the other. We marry things about each other. Very different. A guy marries a girl for her money. And he's upfront about it. I'm marrying you for your money. Is that offensive?
Mildly.
It's offensive because it's a very put down of the other. I don't want to marry you. I want to marry your money. Thinly disguised, what I'm really saying is, can I just have the money? If I could just have the money without marrying you, that would be perfect. But no, okay, I'll marry you. It's such a put down. It's such an insult. Why is it any different if I want to marry you for love? If I say I want to marry you for love, what I mean is I don't want you, the person, the package, I just want the love. So we get married, and 2 weeks later, you're giving me an opinion. Hey, I didn't ask for your opinion, just the love. Now you're giving me your mood, your personality, your shtick. Hey, just the love. So the result is, our grandparents didn't necessarily like all the things about each other. When they got married, they didn't know many of the things, but they married each other. They bonded, and they became inseparable. So they argued for the rest of their lives about everything. We're doing the opposite. We get married because we like things about each other. Do we really want the other? No. So if the things I like about my wife go away, there's nothing left. Fell out of love? Well, then there's nothing left. You don't have money anymore? Well, then your looks are gone? I only married you for your looks. So what's left? Nothing. Annoyance. Get out of my life. The trick to marriage is you're marrying an other, a person, not a collection of nice things. So a man says, I love everything about my wife. Oh, so that's why she wants to divorce you. Why does she want to divorce you? Because you treat her like a bunch of things that are very nice, that you appreciate, but you're not married to her. And the result is, she feels alone in the world. And that's a horrible feeling.
So what's the difference in how you would treat someone when you're married to them and not to their things about them?
Oh, that's a good question. Why is it that two men who have been friends forever went through life together in everything, and they're on the Titanic, and the ship is going down, and one of them finds an empty space on a raft, on a whatever. He jumps on there, saves his life. Half hour later, he thinks, oh, where's my friend? And now he feels guilty. But everyone will assure him it's understandable. You panicked. In panic, it's every man for himself, and you forgot your friend. We understand it, and it's forgivable. Now you have a husband and wife on the Titanic. And they've only been married for 2 weeks. The guy, the husband, sees an opportunity to save himself. He jumps onto the raft, and a half hour later thinks, oh, where's my wife? Why will nobody forgive him? You forgot your wife. He says, wait, oh, I only know her for 2 weeks. And this guy's been friends for 40 years. They went to army together. They went to school together. And his forgetfulness is forgivable. Mine is not. Why? I don't know. There's something about marriage. How can you forget your wife? I panicked. No excuse. So there is a magical bond that marriage produces. And you become more related to your spouse than you are to your parents. That's another thing the Torah says right at the beginning. Therefore should a man leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife and become one. Can he cleave to his parents and become one? No. With your parents, you are not one. You're number 3 at best. The only relationship in where you become one, not with your parents, not with your children. Marriage is closer, which is kind of ironic because you're strangers to begin with. But then you become family more than family of birth. That's an amazing thing. So you're exempt from the mitzvah of honoring your parents when you're married because the marriage comes first, which means it's a deeper bond than your bond to your parents. What does it mean to marry someone rather than something about each other? If the problem is that I am just me, and that's not good enough, what's the antidote? How do I stop being just me? My shadow? No, that's just me. If I cloned myself, would that? No, that would just be me. The only solution is I have to marry someone who is not me. In fact, we are so different. It's like Mars and Venus. That's who we marry. Someone from a different planet. Then we know we're not alone. If I marry some other, it means someone with different feelings, different needs, different opinions, different personality, different shtick. The part that is familiar to me is just more of me. So I love the way you talk. I love the way, that's just a reflection of me. I have to be enamored with the parts of you that are not me, otherwise I'm still alone. A narcissist can be happily married. but the spouse won't be. He's enjoying everything he sees that he is comfortable with, because that's more of him. But she is alone in the world. So what does it mean to marry the other and not things? Love the fact that she's not you. Love the things that are not familiar, that make her not you. That's the part we don't like. So we got to change our view of that. I love the fact that you're so weird. You're so different from me. Like, wow, you really think that way? You really feel that? I don't feel that. So we should get divorced. Now we're getting married.
Would you encourage people to date people who are different than them?
You don't have to look for differences. They're there. Again, unless you're marrying a clone, there are plenty of differences.
If you like this conversation, like and subscribe to our channel.